Hey everybody, Matt here. Just go ahead and call me Ursher, because these are my confessions. I had to have my wisdom teeth taken out yesterday, and man, it was one of the best things I've ever done in my life. Can't wait for everybody to get your wisdom teeth taken out. Running a special on it right now, $9.99. It's more than that. So let's go do it together. If I ever get new ones, we can go do that again. And yeah. So I should have recorded a intro for this. Oh God, it's so hard to breathe now. I should have recorded an episode for this, the intro for the episode earlier this week. I didn't. I'm sorry. This surgery snuck up on me, and I just had to do it. And you know what? I'm really glad that you're here. I'm so glad you're here. Next time I get my wisdom teeth taken out, we're just gonna watch all the Harry Potters. All of them. So yes, I kind of don't have a choice. It's either live in an immense amount of pain or do the intro for the show a little bit drugged up. So, hey, you know what? Don't wait till you're in your 30s to get your wisdom teeth taken out. That's a little piece of advice. Also, huge thank you to everybody who is hitting the subscribe button on our podcast and telling y'all friends about it. Man, what a way to start a conversation. Let me know how it works out for you. And I want to tell you, today's episode is amazing. It's a friend of mine, Blake. And Blake, if you're listening, I'm calling you friend, because Blake is a friend of mine. He calls me friend. He might not, but he has to now, or else it'll be weird when we go to Steak and Shake. And I hope that y'all really like this conversation. Blake has a podcast and a website, because it's 2010. You gotta do all of that stuff. And he has an amazing podcast called Exvangelical. And I wanted to post this episode that I did, this conversation that I had with Blake, because, man, for the past few months, we've just been going pretty hard against the paint with all of this talk about Christianity and faith and what it all means and where it's all headed. And just, y'all know. We should probably do some happier episodes. This is a pretty happy episode that I had a great time with Blake. Blake, man, I'm sorry I couldn't get you a better intro than this, but I really hate doing those cold opens where just people start talking and there's no context for anything that's going on. Anyway, I'm going to be all healed up pretty soon, and you're going to be back to regular old Matt introducing the episode. You're going to love it. Sit down and here we go. Blake's a cool guy. Awesome. Well, yeah, it's so good to finally meet you. I'm a little bit late to the meeting because I was incapacitated. My wife is not home tonight, and so anytime she's not around, I normally end up making chicken curry, and it's like progressively gotten spicier and spicier like over the years as I keep making it, because I guess just that regular spice don't do it for me no more. But unfortunately it wreaks havoc on my septic system, so there's that. Yeah. I love starting off all these conversations with a classic overshare. So, yeah. Are you recording on your end? Do you have everything? Is it good?
Started. Okay. So yeah, now I'm recording. It looks like it's it's recognizing it. I just saw that apparently Skype is finally adding in recording like natively, but
oh, that's interesting.
But I haven't gotten the update for that. So I updated, but I guess it's still coming, but finally they're going to do it to make things easier on podcasters and stuff.
That'd be really awesome. Except I feel like I've spent so much time like figuring out the workarounds for Skype. It's like whoever's designing the Skype thing, because it's clearly just one guy in a basement somewhere, I'm sure. It's too streamlined, and I'm kind of like, where I need more buttons.
You need more?
I need more buttons. And maybe because I'm like a synthesizer guy, so I'm always like looking for knobs and stuff. But yeah.
Nice.
So that's great. So you are, did you say that you're a bachelor this weekend?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. My wife started a new job. And so she had to go out to the West Coast for training. And then my daughter is with my in-laws for the week.
Awesome.
So yeah, I'm a bachelor for the next few nights, which will be nice.
Well, so how do you have like your things that you revert to? Like whenever my wife's not home, I really do just kind of revert to a piece of shit. And I've found that this is true with a lot of my other friends too, where they're kind of like, if my wife's not here, I really don't know what to do with myself. So I just start looking for, I like revert to being back in third grade. It's like cartoons, there's candy. Like, you know, what can I do? There's this cool place in Asheville that I like to go called the Retrocade. And it's just like all these coin-op machines and stuff.
Right,
and
yeah.
For whatever reason, I'm like, I know that bores the hell out of her to follow me to places like that. So sometimes I'll just go hang out and do that. Or
right.
You know.
Yeah, for me, I don't know. The house gets a little bit messy, and I mean we've been married 11 years, so a lot of that stuff that I would do, she already, you know, we're comfortable enough now.
Congratulations.
I'm not. Yeah. So, but let's see. Yeah, usually especially if my daughter's gone too, like I'll actually go out during the week. That's the main difference. So like I have a friend that doesn't have any kids, and so I'm going to see him tomorrow on a Tuesday.
You have one friend that doesn't have any kids at this point in your life.
Yeah. So anyways, that's sort of, I'm not very, I'm pretty boring this week, to be honest. I'm probably going to be putting some extra time into, like the podcast stuff, because I've got a 9 to 5. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. What do you do for your 9 to 5?
I work in email marketing, so I.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
How do you is this something that you feel like you're naturally inclined to? Like, are you a numbers guy? Are you really good at just sort of looking at metrics and stuff, or?
No, actually. So I got and I don't know if we're just, I got a writing major in college, and eventually I found a couple of jobs outside of college, but then got into copywriting for email marketing. And then but I've gone over, I do more of the analysis stuff on the other side. So, but it's fun just because it's actually it's an interesting little creative challenge, especially on like the copywriting side, and like the ways in which you can marry like a creative challenge and some technical challenges, because there's all these legal rules about the things you can and can't do. And then there's also just think about how you act when you have email. Like you don't really want to read it unless like a subject line grabs your attention, right? You know? So
yeah.
So it's a fun little creative challenge to like try to entice someone to do that. But I mean, I work for a nonprofit, so it's not like I don't know. Some people, when I tell them I do that, they're like, so you're sending me spam? You're the guy sending me spam? It's like, no, I'm just.
You're like, no, I'm the guy writing the sensationalist headlines that make you click on the spam.
That's right. No, yeah. No, I don't even do that anymore. I'm behind the scenes now. I analyze what other people choose to write.
That is so cool. It is so much easier, as we found out on this podcast, to critique the hell out of everything around us than it is to come up with new things.
Yeah.
So I heard, I'm not entirely sure how I found out about your podcast. Maybe a friend turned me onto it, or maybe it just like kind of popped up on the internet as I was sort of searching around. And I was totally grabbed by the title. It was enticing. So for someone who writes amazing email titles, I think you chose a really great name for your podcast.
Thanks.
Yeah. And I was listening to it and I was like, wow, this guy whines even more than we do about this shit. And I was like, he clearly, like, the thing that I really appreciate you is that about you is that you, from what little I know of you, like, I'm not trying to overstep here. But like you present ideas and concepts in a very well read, very well thought out sort of a way. And for us, we're very much like maybe the other end of that spectrum, where we're just kind of like scattershot. Like, here's all of the ideas and feelings and emotions and all of this stuff at one time. And hey, what do you think about it? Kind of a thing. But yeah, I appreciate your approach. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Do you usually do a cold open, or is this?
Oh, you were on the podcast like before you turned your computer on.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. So yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. It was something that I went to college for. Like, I didn't go, I went to college. I chose to go to a evangelical college because I thought I wanted to be a pastor and I wanted to be educated about these things.
Did you grow up in a Christian home?
Yeah.
Whereabouts?
I grew up in central Indiana, a small town called Crawfordsville.
Oh, I know Crawfordsville.
No way.
Yeah, of course. Because we used to tour all over the Midwest, and so we passed through Crawfordsville. We probably even played in Crawfordsville at some point.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's a small community, and my family went to a United Methodist church there, and the United Methodist church actually has a lot of theological diversity in its ranks. If you go to somewhere like where I live now in Chicago, it's a more liberal sort of denomination. But if you go to rural Indiana, like where I grew up, it's going to be a bit more conservative. When I was in high school, we moved to the suburbs of Chicago, and we, just by happenstance, not by intent, we also attended a UM church there, and it was a bit moderate, I suppose. But yeah, this was what I wanted, my life to be. And it was really this combination of a number of things, primarily, like the first full week of my college career or experience or what have you, is when 9/11 happened. And that totally changed the tenor of my college experience. And then also learning about the Bible and how it's written and how it was written and composed and collected and everything.
So where did you say you went to college?
Shock to me. Indiana Wesleyan is where I went.
Indiana Wesleyan, gotcha. Cool.
Yeah. Yep. So I used to, and in the earlier episodes of the show, it was like a running joke. Some friends of mine that were my early guests that I knew from college, we wouldn't mention it. We'd call it like the school that shall not be named and things like that. But, but eventually I sort of went more public about it after the election because the school has connections to Mike Pence, and so I wanted to be more vocal about those criticisms.
Man, isn't that so crazy? Like I think I don't know if you know this about me. I actually used to be a college professor.
Really?
I taught music business at a college in North Carolina. It was also it was definitely like a smaller liberal arts. It was like supposedly non-denominational, but kind of had these like pseudo Presbyterian ties.
Gotcha.
But like, and I don't know what Wesleyanism is like, or just how diverse it gets within that spectrum. But I know that it was like from day one, the experience I had was like, well, you never meet the same Presbyterian twice. Like it's always just kind of changing and crazy. And I actually thought that was something sort of beautiful about that. But you very quickly, I guess when you're in the closed door meetings, realize just how politically charged everything kind of is. And I had these few moments where I was like, I thought we were here to educate people. I thought we were here to give people the best information that we could, to not religiously charge information, and not to tell people where to land, but to help them figure out how to land somewhere or how to keep the plane in the air. Like, and then like not want to kill yourself. Like, so yeah, I don't know. Like, but I also had a very disillusioning college experience of my own when I was much younger. And so this sounds like, I would assume that maybe we have some similarities in story there.
Yeah. So it's probably very likely. Did you go to a Christian school too? Christian college?
I did go to a Christian college.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at least at the time, it was an interesting place because you sort of navigated these weird elements of like, okay, I was part of the history department, and they were really big on double majors at the time. So I had a history major and then also a biblical literature major.
Yeah.
And so my history classes were very politically charged, like you said.
Yeah.
And some of the professors were primarily interested in indoctrinating you into their sort of belief, not necessarily teaching you how to think critically and come to your own conclusions or presenting a wide breadth of interpretations of historical events, but rather that there's a singular one and it's called the biblical Christian worldview and it is unassailable.
Right. And at that point, it's not education, it's conditioning.
Right. Yeah, precisely. So that was one element. And then another was, like I had very sort of open-minded and very, professors in my, religion classes that were very open-minded, very open to interpretation.
Yeah.
And like that was a sort of, presented a lot of cognitive dissonance. I wouldn't have known that term back then, but that is, in retrospect, what that felt like. Yeah. And on top of that, then there's all these weird social dynamics of like, okay, we're not supposed to watch rated R movies. Could anybody in my dorm, if they know I watch a rated R movie, could they snitch on me? Will they snitch? Like, will they enforce the rules or will they be cool? It turns everybody, like all this legalism turns an entire student population that is like hormone laden and rebellious or whatever to begin with into deviance.
It's too stressful. No, I almost like I had to leave after my first year of like I was going to leave one way or the other after my first year of college because I was like I went to a private school growing up, so there's a ton of jokes there. That my friends constantly remind me of. But then like I get to college and I was the good kid in high school. Like I really was kind of Mr. Squeaky Clean in high school.
Yeah.
And then after like my first semester of college, it was like, wow, this guy's a rabble rouser. And I was like, how did I go from this like this perfect sort of like, got out of high school, got the grades I wanted, I had a job in high school, like I had all these different things going for me. And then I end up in my first semester of college and like they just couldn't, I don't know. I don't know what it was. I don't know if I rubbed people the wrong way or if it was just like, no, I have questions. It was that same thing. I would get this rhetoric that was like, we're telling you what to believe. And you just kind of have these really simple responses like, well, is that true for everyone? Or isn't it a little more complicated than that? Or what about people who have completely different life experiences? And a really great educator can help facilitate all of those conversations and makes your world bigger. But the really bad ones just shrink your world until you feel like you have. I'm sorry. I do this podcast for therapy, Blake. Did you know that you were gonna be my therapist tonight?
It's all right. It's very cathartic to talk about these things. That's why podcasts like yours and like mine and like so many others, that's why they exist. I think it's a serious like catharsis to be able to talk about it.
Did you intellectualize totally your way out of evangelicalism? Like, did you think your way out of the church, or did you have a few of these like kind of crucial moments where you're like, I can't like this thing has changed my world so much that I actually can't unsee.
Right.
Yeah,
that's a good question. I think that there have been a couple of like inflection points, and one of them certainly was in college, and it was everything regarding the run up to the Iraq War. I never, I didn't believe the rhetoric of the Bush administration, and I was really disconcerted about the sort of just this crazy amount of patriotism and like just this drumbeat to war sort of thing, and people actually sort of being excited about it. And like I was trying to reconcile, you know, I felt like I was becoming increasingly more pacifist the more I studied like the biblical texts and things like that. So it was a combination. Like I do feel it was definitely a very emotional thing. It was like, you know, I was an anxious college kid. And I processed a lot of stuff like emotionally, but there was also an intellectual component. Like, one of the things that that hit me was, I didn't even really realize that I believed that the Bible was like literal. But it was something that I must have had an unconscious assumption. So when I started learning biblical Greek and learning about like different manuscripts and like, and all the incredible amount of biblical scholarship that's been built up over the last 150 plus years since like high criticism became a thing in biblical scholarship, like it wreaked havoc on my faith that I had then. And it took a long time, like that, what people call like deconstruction. That was my first major phase of that, you know? And then, like I just, you know, throughout those college years, I barely went to church. You know, I was forced to go to chapel. So I would go.
Chapel
when I
Nazis.
had to.
They're everywhere.
But I didn't go to church. I wasn't invested. I wasn't ever hitting the fields like I was in high school, you know, in youth group. Like I was, you know, worship leader in youth group and all that sort of stuff. You know, I could still play Trading My Sorrows on my bass if I needed to right now.
And no one's going to ask you to do that. Maybe.
I mean, I could.
To end the podcast, we'll have you take a bass solo on Trading My Sorrows. That's such a fucking deep dive into like Christian culture. Oh my gosh. But I totally remember it.
Yeah.
It's great.
So I for those years in college and a few years afterwards, like I didn't know whether I was a Christian, whether I wasn't a Christian. And it just like, I had to stop sort of asking myself that question all the time. Because I think sometimes, like, especially if you grew up in this culture, like you are so used to criticizing yourself constantly, like, you know, submitting all your thoughts to the Lord and all those different things. Like it's exhausting. And like, I had to stop. So I did for a while. And then like, eventually I was working after college. I was working full time, and I was going to grad school part time, and I ended up taking this course on like energy and the environment of all things. And then I somehow got connected to the writings of Wendell Berry, and then I dove into this whole movement called Creation Care, which is about like stewardship of the earth from a Christian perspective. And that was sort of the first sort of phase of like a reconstruction of sorts.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I mean, now like there have been different phases where we've gone to church and we haven't gone to church, and we had a really like traumatic leaving of a church, and that led to a couple of years.
Like you and your family, or like your mom and dad, or you and your wife?
Me and my wife and I. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So for a couple of years we didn't attend anywhere, and then in the last couple of years we've been attending Episcopal services. So I mean, it's been, you know, as corny as it is, it's been like a journey.
Blake, were you the instigator? Did they kick you out for a good reason?
So it wasn't necessarily like, the circumstances were this. We went to a church that was like non-denominational, very small, met in community centers and in elementary schools and things like that.
Yeah.
And
during classroom hours. There's the problem. Figured it out. I'm just kidding.
And it was a conservative place, and like we weren't conservative. Like even then, we weren't conservative.
Like you didn't dress conservatively?
No, like theologically, they were complementarian and we were egalitarian. That was the big thing. That was the main reason we never became full members, even though we were very involved.
Can you give me a quick 30-second difference between egalitarian and complicatarian?
Yeah, complementarian is the if you ever hear of the group of like the Council for Biblical Manhood and Womanhood and things like that.
Oh,
that's, like John Piper and Wayne Grudem. It's this bogus belief and bad hermeneutic of the belief that wives should submit to their husbands, and like it takes those verses from the pastoral epistles and puts them above pretty much everything else. And
and those ideas were a huge
Bible.
part of the Nashville statement that came out nine months ago, a year ago. Okay,
yeah, and I believe that council was deeply involved, if not responsible for that. I don't know exactly whether they were or not without Googling it, but I know that they were involved. And
so egalitarianism would be like the opposite of that.
Yeah, so it's instead of there being a subordination of a wife to a husband, or more broadly women to men, egalitarian believes that men and women are equal.
Right.
Looks at things in the biblical text, like from Galatians, that Paul says, Christ, there's neither Hebrew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female, or looks at the fact that the first witnesses of the resurrection were women.
Right.
Things like that.
So sexy but equal. Got it.
Yeah. Separate. Yeah. Yeah. So that was the sort of the main thing. And we approached the lead pastor at the time, in private, and we tried to have these conversations, but eventually it became untenable.
Your wife tied him to a chair, and you brought a baseball bat in and you started tapping it on your hand.
No, yeah,
hey,
it
pal.
was just, it was, no, I mean, it was discussions involving my wife and I and the pastor and their spouse and things like that. It was a whole ordeal. It was very upsetting.
So is this because you challenged his assumption or his belief? Like what was the goal of what you were doing with the path? Because I'm really grateful for you for doing this, because this is a really vulnerable situation to put yourself in, because they're like church, like those kinds of situations happen in churches all the time, but especially here in the South, we don't talk about it, especially not on the internet.
Yeah, no, I mean, so this is, yeah, it was,
were you trying to change his mind or get him to acknowledge that you might have a point, or, yeah.
Well, eventually, I mean, we started just by saying, okay, these are our beliefs, and this is why we're not members. And it was initially, people have said this before and they usually leave. And then eventually, what was supposed to happen is that we were supposed to have like a prolonged year-long conversations, like a series of conversations. And the pastor refused to have the conversation after the first one. It just would not continue the conversation.
What is this year long? What is this, like a trial period?
It was just supposed to be like a period of, I don't know, what some people call it, like a period of discernment or whatever. It was really just supposed to, be this way that like, we could make our positions known and all of that sort of stuff. But But nonetheless, it didn't work out. So I don't know how to even summarize it further than that. But I mean, basically, the long and the short of it is that it is a very big doctrinal difference. And I mean, you're not going to tell my daughter in Sunday school or anywhere else what she can or can't do,
Sure.
especially in the name of God. Like, you're not, like, that's not okay with me. And the same goes for any interaction that would be had with with my wife. She has her own voice. She has her own value. It's not dependent upon mine.
Right.
And that's an inherent value that I have, and I believe that it's supported by Scripture, and by Christian tradition and so many other things, and common sense and experience. So yeah, that was definitely one of the things that led to a period of being, quote, unchurched, unquote. But
well, that's awesome. I guess, and we can totally move on from this. I just want to kind of understand the ins and outs of the situation. Like, was this an attempt to sort of understand where the pastor, or this was like, hey, if we're going to be a part of this congregation, if you disagreed with what was happening there at the church, would you not just leave, or did you feel like you had the freedom to leave, or?
So I think this is something that, I think a lot of people probably have experience in that, like, regardless of whether you might believe the same thing as either leadership or other people in a community, like, you still love the people in the community, and even if you disagree with something that might have been said from a pulpit at some point, so we loved the people, we loved the community. It meant a lot to us, and it hurt to lose it pretty deeply, because they were a huge part of our social circle. And it's oh my gosh, that was my dog coughing. Sorry.
Asthma dog.
Where was I before my dog rudely interrupted me?
It hurts to lose a community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was essentially it. And things were at this point where, we had to be more upfront, because the fact that we weren't, official members, and there is like a statement of faith that you have to agree to, and we couldn't agree to it in good conscience,
Blake, I think you and I are hitting on a really important experience, because as you're talking through this experience you have with your church, this is so paralleled with my experience at the college and why I don't have a job there anymore. And it was very much along the lines of the same thing. We had an incredible community of friends, and we had an incredible community of intellectual discussion and of religious exploration and all these different things. And like, everybody kind of brought their own baggage, and they brought their own enlightenment. And there was something really beautiful about that. And then administration and the new president comes in and basically is like, I need everyone to double down on this interpretation of what the Bible says about gay marriage. Right. And just would not budge. Yeah. And we did the same thing. We put together a group of people, and we're like, hey, can we understand this a little bit more? Like, what are you actually asking? And are you aware that this is going to absolutely rip this community apart? And you're talking about families, you're talking about people who have dedicated like huge portions of their lives to sustaining this establishment, this college, so that you had a college to be a president of. And if these people had quit working here, you wouldn't be the president of the college. And I don't know what it was. I still don't understand how people could be so dogmatic about this kind of stuff, and then know that it's going to rip everything apart, know that it's going to cause so much division and so much hurt. And instead of just like widening the table and being like, look, everyone's welcome here, I want the ideas, it was just like, no, if you can't in good conscience say that you know without a shadow of a doubt this is what the Bible says. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, I'm sorry. I actually think that this whole situation is bullshit because everyone just has to decide where they're going to land on the Bible, and it doesn't make it right or wrong. And there's no quantifiable like way of knowing whether or not you're right or wrong about it. Like it's a to me, it kind of boiled down to a faith issue. It's like you guys decide to put your faith in this thing, and we sort of decide to not put our faith in that thing, but a totally different thing over here. And somehow it must all fall under the umbrella of Christianity. But why are we so divided? Why can't we work together? What is so crazy about me having this idea about marriage or about my ideas about my friends who are gay that you find so threatening that this is something that has nothing to do with my job, nothing to do with my day-to-day, nothing to do with what I teach. But just the fact that they know I believe this one way, that I am the poison in the well and I have to be eradicated. I hate that. What does that serve?
Well, it serves, it serves for a lot of Christian colleges that are beholden to an aging population of donors. And there has been some research into that. I know that Chris Stroop has written on it about like Christian colleges across the country, like cracking down on basically different like political beliefs, like divergent political beliefs. Like, most notably, there was of course like Larissa Hawkins at Wheaton, who I don't know if you know that story of she is a person of color. She wore a hijab.
Yes. I actually followed that story pretty closely because of this situation that was happening, because our president actually came from Wheaton.
Okay. Yeah. So like there is this instance of like, this is happening where you have these either statements of belief or statements of faith or whatever, and you have to sign off on them and you have to toe the line or else you lose your livelihood.
Yep.
And it's really awful. And it's just straight up like oppression. It's interfering with freedom of religion. It's just a religion that evangelicals don't like.
Isn't this what terrorists do to maintain power and control? Isn't this what cult leaders do to...
Well, yeah, they restrict belief. They restrict... there have been plenty of people that have argued that evangelicalism is a cult. And, a lot of people will say that evangelicalism is not some monolithic thing, but there are a number of cultural elements that are prevalent throughout different expressions of it. And even if it's not a monolithic thing, it is a network of things like colleges and publishing houses and bookstores and churches and political lobbying groups. And they all work together and, in lockstep to push forth this agenda of political and social and theological conservatism. And if people push back on those things that they disagree with because they're fundamentalists and they only see the text or society in a very particular way and in only a singular way, then those people are vulnerable.
Right. Just
like you. That's really unfortunate. No, I feel terrible for you because and it's absolutely awful that has happened to you and to so many other people too. They enter a job with the hopes of utilizing their faith along with their vocation, and they're robbed of the opportunity to do that just because of because they believe something differently, and it's blood boiling. It's really frustrating.
Yeah, it is. But I also want to be quick to acknowledge that there are there are many people in academia who have encountered very, very similar situations to what you and I are discussing right now within that structure, and they have lost far, far more. Like, I miss my kids, and I miss learning how to educate, because I thought that was kind of fun. I thought conveying ideas was really fun, and I obviously miss my kids. I miss being able to talk to people in that age group who are going through really tough times, or they just need affirmation, or actually being able to see kids like me that I know just need somebody to pull them aside and be like, you can do whatever you want to do. And everything you're looking at around you right now is smoke and mirrors. They're like, you can game the system. All you have to do is work. Just work for it. Yeah. And stay focused.
But, it's just unfortunate that within evangelical colleges, these kids are really, they're boxed in so tight, and their behavior is so tightly monitored. If it's not explicitly, then it is just through the types of, the way in which things sort of just make you paranoid on a Christian college campus.
It's young adult daycare. It's not preparing anyone for the way the world actually is. It's maintaining the insulation. And and you and I probably have both. We probably both have friends. I would venture to guess that we saw go through that process. And I think you and I are probably pretty embittered about it, or maybe trying to recover from it. I certainly am. But we also saw people go off the deep end. When they got out into the real world, or when they realized that oh my gosh, all my other friends got degrees from colleges that cared about educating them. And I got a degree from a college that didn't prepare me for a workforce, didn't give me any skills, didn't prepare me for any of the things that life was going to throw at me afterwards. And I'm also over $100,000 in debt at the end of it. And I know that's it's the same old, play me the same sad song. I get it. People hear this narrative spoken about time and time again, but it's something that everyone's living with.
Right.
And I think everybody's trying to figure out how to have fun now.
And then honestly, it is a very specific story that I think needs to be told about places like Christian colleges. And because, there are lots, and even though there are more state schools and all of that, it's not like this is a non-existent experience that people have.
Right.
And even if parents think they're doing the right thing by sending their kids to a Christian college, just because it's a Christian college, if the education is garbage, then it's garbage. And you're bound to the bubble's going to burst, and you're being ill prepared. One of my friends, Nathan Cleveland, who is on the show, he described it as being sold a false bill of goods.
Yes. Yes.
Just whole, part and parcel, all of it. The worldview they try to give you, for many programs, the degree they give you, it's infuriating. And those sorts of stories need to be told for sure.
Yeah. So this is why I get so encouraged when I come across people who are creating the kind of content that you're creating, and that are having these discussions, that are kind of seeing what comes out in the wash, and cooking a pot big enough to see what's going to float to the top, if the cream's going to float to the top. Because I think there are better ideas about how to do this. I, in my personal life, have kind of come so far outside of whatever the Christianity is that I grew up with, that I don't really know what to define myself as. All I really know is I have a set of really interesting ideas and conversations that I like to have with people, and I'm still kicking the tires on it, and it still feels amalgamous, and it still kind of feels like, well, I don't quite know. But the difference is I'm not afraid of being wrong anymore. Yeah. I'm not afraid of getting the Bible wrong. I don't think anybody can, like, we're talking about thousands of years of human history, and not just the Bible, but with other religions as well. We're talking about sacred texts across the continent, about, the world, the planet, the known universe. Aliens have them too. But yeah, just the story keeps getting bigger, the narrative keeps getting bigger, and there's some parts of it that I'm just so, that I'm so exhausted of talking about and of rehashing, and I'm trying to figure out now how to wake up every day and still engage in these really fun and interesting and thought-provoking conversations, and trying to experience life with people in a way that doesn't feel trite, and that doesn't feel preconceived, it doesn't feel dirty through some lens that I'm looking at it through. And just honestly try to have fun. Try to have fun with the journey. Try to have fun with the conversation. Because I'm tired of it being so damn serious all the time.
Yeah, no, and I think that's great. Like, I definitely, if I was going to like tease out all of my, be very specific about my belief, it would, or what I think about, to use like Hitchhiker's Guide, like life, the universe, and everything, then it would, it would not be all specifically Christian things. I think that sense of like reverence and wonder about about reality, about your own experience, and about valuing other people and other things outside of yourself is sometimes it's enough. Like, a lot of times if you've come from like a really strong religious perspective, if that was what was handed to you and that's what you have thought your way through, and you no longer agree with what you were initially taught, then like let yourself, take that bravery that you had to question things and move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And keep being brave. Like, and it's, one of the sort of phrases that I use, and come back to from time to time on the show is wholeness over holiness. It's better for you to feel whole and to feel like a complete person than to feel like a complete piece of shit because you're not like holy enough.
I love that. I love that because it gets to the point that as a child, my experience in church was that if I was too happy about something, if I was happy, or I was enjoying something, or I was taking pleasure in something, that it was sinful, it was wrong, and I felt like when.
Right, like you're just supposed to delight in God.
Because you're just so nervous about everything, because you're so scared of all of it. And you're scared of doing it wrong, and you're scared of wondering whether or not it's witchcraft. And you're scared if you go see a movie and somehow you see an image of something on the screen that maybe Satan is going to crawl into your mind through that and then pollute all of your thoughts. And it's just fucking maddening. Just ridiculousness. Like that I don't know why people perpetuate these narratives that make all of us miserable. If Christianity's so good and there's freedom in the narrative of Christ, if it's a way of doing life that's better than everything else, then why does it feel so shitty? That was my question. That was my question, years ago when I started asking all these things, and I think it's valid.
Oh, absolutely.
Why are we all afraid of each other?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a totally valid question. I mean, and that's it. If Jesus said that he's giving you life abundant and it feels like crap, that's a valid question to ask. And I think that within evangelicalism, people are underserved because they're expected to develop a particular type of belief and to keep it the same for their entire life. And that's just not the way life works.
Or education.
You change your mind. Right. You change your mind, you learn new things. Like honestly, one of the things that sort of helped me and was a really good vehicle while I was still like entrenched in evangelicalism, was this thing that was called
a Toyota Tercel.
I had a LeBaron in college, which was pretty sweet.
Oh, wow. You were that guy.
Anyways, it was this thing that I was taught because I was at a Wesleyan school. It was called the Wesleyan Quadrilateral, and it's these 4 things, and it's supposed to be what helps you like understand the world. And it's for a Christian, for a Methodist or a Wesleyan, it's supposed to be scripture, reason, tradition, and experience. And all those things are supposed to talk to one another. But within evangelicalism, as it's existed for a long time now, like you have a set idea of scripture. You can only trust reason so far.
Right.
Tradition is only good if it's this particular kind of tradition, and your experience is worth nothing.
Right. Right.
You know, because the heart is deceitful above all things, as another person that I've talked to has said. You know, that was something that was said like repeatedly in her church. So yeah, like having those things actually talk to one another, like you're going to grow, you're going to change. And evangelicalism stifles that. Like it suffocates people. The bubble is airtight and like air can't get in.
Right. Yeah. I love that. Okay, good. I was looking at, for everybody listening at home, like we're doing this over Skype, and I can see, I couldn't tell if Blake was choking or if he was like, hey, why don't you talk now, you asshole? Leave me hanging over here. So what are you, tell me about you now. Like, would you describe yourself, and feel free to pontificate, because I know this is not like a yes or no answer. Would you consider yourself, I know that you don't consider yourself to be an evangelical, which is still, that terminology is maybe a little bit weird for the rest of the world, or was until they all voted for Trump. But would you consider yourself to be,
then everybody,
you consider yourself to be a Christian? Are you a recovering religious guy? Do you still have the LeBaron?
I no longer have the LeBaron. It died, unfortunately. That's the
just
easy
like your
one.
faith.
Yeah. Right. Well, I do still attend church. I, like, as I mentioned in passing earlier, like I started attending an Episcopal church, which in a lot of really unexpected ways has been very healing.
Yeah.
The like rector that leads our church has been wonderful. She's been amazing. The community overall has been very good. I mean, if I like really tease things out, I would probably say like I'm an Episcopalian, agnostic, universalist, Buddhist, panentheistic. Yeah, that's probably like, those are probably all the modifiers I would have.
Yeah. A la carte.
Yeah. I mean, it's more like, okay, so I appreciate the Christian tradition. I appreciate, like the liturgy that I'm learning and everything. As far as like saying that I'm agnostic, that just means I don't know. Universalist, meaning that I don't believe that a loving God would send people to hell. Buddhist, I just find a number of the practices very affirming and helpful.
Good for blood pressure.
And yes. And like panentheistic, I'm a little unsure about that, but generally that God is in all things. And I'm, I still actively engage in like theological thinking almost constantly. I don't know if it's because like my brain is structured differently because I'm epileptic, or, some people say that there's a heightened sense of religiosity.
Yeah.
In epileptics. But the driving sort of things that push me forward is like, I do still want to understand what's being said in the, in the biblical text, but I'm also curious about other religions, like you said, like you've mentioned, like what is affirming about these other traditions? What is life-giving about other spiritual practices? And I don't condemn those things anymore. Like the things that affirm people's humanity, and the things that affirm the value of creation, of this reality that we inhabit, those are the things that I consider, those are the things that I consider worth pursuing. And so like within the context of Exvangelical, I talk to people that are still religious and people that still aren't, or that are no longer. And I don't really differentiate between those things.
Are you still having fun with the questions, or are you just asking them because you can't play video games? Epileptic. That's rude.
No,
you're so rude,
no,
Matt.
it's no, it's I don't even think the questions are always the same. I'm no longer concerned about things like I'm no longer concerned about questions of like, where did the universe come from? And I don't care about when the world ends anymore, like, because I don't believe it'll end like that.
Whatever that is.
Like Left Behind, okay? I was really into Left Behind.
I don't believe Nicolas Cage will bring about the end of the world. There, I said it.
Definitely not Kirk Cameron. But I'm more interested in like the things that motivate people to be better, the things that motivate people to live ethically. Like I'm very, very motivated by
epically or ethically. Don't know if
ethically.
Ethically, like with a TH.
Yeah.
Okay. The things that make people live epically, brah.
Yeah. Like those are the things that motivate me. Like understand the teachings of Jesus in those respects are extremely challenging.
Yeah.
And how would Jesus speak to a privileged white straight man in 2018 in America, and like, what am I supposed to do with that privilege? Like, I think that I'm supposed to abdicate it and give it up as much as possible, and not make everything about myself. And that's why the show is about other people. It's about, I very actively make sure that I have very close to 50-50. It wavers just based on scheduling, but very close to 50-50 gender representation, a high representation of people of color and people across the LGBTQ community. Like all of those things are important to me because it reflects reality as it is. And their stories are valid and important, and they need to be told more than mine does, to be honest. So the questions aren't even the same, but I'm still fascinated by them. You know, like I still am like moving forward, and I'm still engaging in this. And even if I stop saying someday that I'm a Christian, I'll still keep asking questions. I'll still, and I think that, should God exist, that God would honor that. Yeah. And I think that God honors when someone is so hurt by the church that they can't step foot in one again, like a loving God would honor that. He doesn't like, so those are the things that
but Blake,
motivate me.
Backsliders, he still honors backsliders. They knew what they were doing when they got hurt. It was their fault for bullying in the first place. Yeah, I get it. I get it. I love that.
So anyways, thank you for letting me pontificate because I can't answer that question quickly.
Awesome. That's so cool. So I know that you've got a lot of episodes out right now, and people can kind of, I'm assuming that it's probably similar to our podcast and that people kind of watch the journey happen and go on their own journey. And we're kind of like, if us talking about this stuff helps you in some way, that's awesome. We kind of do it for therapy. And because we think it's really fun. But have there been any moments on your show that were eye-opening or memorable, or any guests that you were like, man,
oh, sure,
this is something I never thought of that way before?
Right. Yeah. Oh man, there have been so many. One of the ones that a lot of times people like, and sometimes I keep it in the edit of where I just let sort of the silence sit in the show. Yeah. But sometimes I do edit it out. And one of the things that I remember happening was when I was speaking to Peterson Toscano, who is this incredible man. He is a Bible scholar, and he talks about LGBTQ or queer narratives in the Bible. And he talks about this from like a deeply personal experience as well. He went through conversion therapy. He did all of these different things. His personal story is deeply moving. And I talked to him a bit about his own personal life. And then he also I asked him to sort of share a couple of stories and some of the narratives that he talks about, because he goes to different places and presents. He has like a stage show that he does as well in conjunction with his studies.
That's cool.
And it's about transgressing the different gender norms and everything within the text.
Transgender and transgression at the same time. Blake, come on now. He was telling me just about how the story of the Ethiopian eunuch and Philip, right, and how how in that story the first foreign convert to Christianity was a gender variant person of color. And like the way in which he teased this out, was just so incredible, that like I was basically like struck dumb and like couldn't talk. So he had to like take over the show for about a minute or two so I could like recover. He also like went into a story about how another eunuch in Jeremiah was thrown into an empty well, and this eunuch, like when he pulled him up, he talked about how he also sent down like blankets so that Jeremiah wouldn't get chafed by the rope when he was pulling him up. And just like what a human touch that is, like how considerate and how caring and delicate and meaningful that is included in the text. Right. So that was an incredible moment. There have been times when like, oh man, there's just there's so many. I could just get sort of lost in memory of it. Yeah. Samantha Field comes on and talks in one episode about like she was in Christian education from like grade school to grad school. Right. So she talks about her experience, and she talks about like going into a museum and feeling this deep cognitive dissonance because like there's fossils and like and it's so moving that it was just a very vulnerable and very moving moment for her to share. Brother Greer in the most recent episode talked about how his family emphasized like a sense of wonder and how that's important in his faith. Yeah. And he's an Episcopal priest now. So he had an experience within evangelicalism, but then chose to pursue
the Episcopal faith later on.
Man, the Episcopalians they're getting everybody. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, man.
And the websites aren't that great, but we have so many friends that have come through. Like we haven't ended up in the Episcopalian denomination, but we have a ton of friends who have, and it has been. I think they're just so attracted to the quiet beauty of it, and the introspection, and that it's a safe place to talk about this kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's like you had the freedom to, there's something about, I don't know, especially for someone that comes from evangelicalism where sometimes you feel like the goalpost is moving all the time. Yeah. And it's not the case there. Like you can come to a service and you can say the words that you say every week as part of the liturgy, and you might not feel it, but it's also the act. It's the act that in and of itself is sort of affirmational. And the fact that it's not something that in your gut or in your mind or anywhere else you disagree with, it's actually something that's worthy of affirmation. That certainly helps. But even so, like if you say a creed or whatever, and you like don't know what you think about it that week, well, you can still say it. And that's one of the key things that's been like something actually mentioning other faiths and everything. Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Buddhist author, wrote a book called Living Buddha, Living Christ, where he compares the two traditions. And one of the things he says is that it's not your belief will change. But it's your practice that will shape you. So over time, your belief about something is malleable, but the thing that will change you is you keep doing that thing. And that's,
the practice itself.
That's really powerful. Right. So that sort of stuck with me, and I sort of parlayed that into my experience within attending an Episcopal church. But the other episode, just I want to loop back and mention is I did get to talk to David Bazan, and he was huge in my sort of in being like his music was instrumental in my life.
Who are you? Why didn't we get to go to college together? He's one of my favorite artists. Yeah, if for no other reason than just like I could just read his lyrics.
Oh man, his lyrics are so good. I'm a huge fanboy. It was really hard not to fanboy out in front of him.
You did fanboy. Don't even lie. You did it.
So going back to sort of the practice. Yeah, that is, again, the way I sort of try to approach life, is what can I do to affirm other people? And especially in people that are coming out of being traumatized, like legitimately traumatized by evangelicalism, especially women, especially people of color.
Minorities.
Yeah. What can I do to try to just affirm their basic humanity? Like, because in some circles that's questioned.
Or like, how would you feel if you were to walk into just like your run of the mill evangelical practicing church this Sunday and you were an immigrant? You would feel, it would feel so weird. I mean, I have to imagine that. Not that I know at any way what it means to be an immigrant. I've spent some time overseas. I've been the minority before, but I haven't lived that way. I haven't stayed that way. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't born into a world where I just was one.
Right.
And I just. Yeah.
Yeah. And in some places, even if you are the minority, sometimes there is still an imbalance. Like I did talk to Jamie Wright, and she talked about when she was in Costa Rica, even though she was the only white person in the crowd, sometimes she could still feel like a social imbalance there.
Because she was the only one drinking Bud Light. I would feel it too, Blake.
Yeah. So.
Oh man, that's awesome. Yeah, those are really great stories. Do you have, so what would be your next endeavor, your next dream, is there a specific person that you want to have a conversation with? What's the next level of world that you want to live in?
I want to continue to do this. I want to be able to have it financed further. I would love to be able to dedicate more of my time to this. Yeah. And because especially in this current social and political climate, the overall population would benefit from understanding evangelicalism better. Mm. And so one of the first element that I sort of had, the first way I approached this when I started the show, and it'll be 2 years on the 19th. We're talking on July 16th. It's just 3 days away. It'll be 2 years since my first show. And really,
congratulations.
I also thanks. I started it similar to what you've said, a sort of a sense of therapy. Yeah. These are conversations that I've sort of had in private before, but it could benefit other people. And I started just with personal narratives, like where'd you come from? Yep. What happened that made you want or have to leave evangelicals? Right. Some people are forced out. Some people choose to leave. And where are you now? Like, that's the thrust of the show. It's those three questions. Yeah. And next, I would love to sort of look at things in a more sort of systemic way. Look at things like Christian education, or things like different elements of evangelicalism, and breaking it down and looking at and sort of dedicating a run of shows to those things, and then see where it sort of leads from there. Like, I will continue to do the shows that I do now, which are these one-on-one interviews or small panels with people to talk about people's stories, because I think that is the most, to me, the reason why it fits in a podcast is because it allows for nuance. It allows for people to, tell their story, and there's a chance that people will listen. Right. Because if someone writes a 3,000 word blog post, they're probably people have short ass attention spans now. So the fact of the matter is that it's hard to get people to commit to that. But they might be able to listen to a story about someone who was gay and went through conversion therapy, or someone who had a dissenting opinion and was forced to leave, or whatever the case may be.
Man, I've got some people I need to connect you with if you want to reresearch conversion therapy.
Sure. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because it's a major problem, and it's horrific, and it hurts people deeply. That's what the show's been about, and that's what the show will continue to be about. Though there are these other additional projects that I would love to pursue in the future as well.
It sounds like you have such a big heart for people, Blake. That's it's really encouraging, that you want to help people tell their stories. I'm kind of in a similar situation where I just got tired of talking about myself. And I was like, I'm not the only one who's had this experience within the music industry, because our podcast is kind of centers around that, but also us sort of coming out of Christian music and and taking that whole journey, which is just a clusterfuck in and of itself. But it's really, really fun to talk about. And I feel like it's important because it hits on these ideas of this is what's being taught in colleges. This is a narrative being perpetuated in entertainment. This is why Duck Dynasty exists, and all these different things. What was the last time that you were so happy that you didn't want it to end?
Oh man.
Have you been happy in a while, Blake?
No, I mean, yes, I have. I mean, it's, probably just really like sort of small, quiet moments with my family. There have been times with like my daughter and my wife where it's just a really, lovely moment. And those are the sorts of times that you have to appreciate in the moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we took a vacation a couple weeks ago, and we're staying in a place with a pool, and we just swam at night after the sun went down, and it was really lovely, and that was a great time.
Simple pleasures. Simple pleasures.
Yeah,
everybody can do that at a holiday. if the pool stays open. That's so good. I love that. I love how just absolutely relatable that answer is, because it's like, this is kind of a theme that keeps happening on the podcast. It's like, why can't we pay attention to anything longer than 30 seconds? And that's even kind of a miracle. And like, we wonder why we're so unhappy, but we get a lot happier when we're quiet. When we spend time and just sit through the uncomfortableness of not being stimulated, because we're so used to stimulation all the time, all day, every day, and just kind of seeing what comes out of the ether whenever you sit with it long enough, like songs and art and words and ideas and love and empathy and narrative, like all of it's just floating around out there, and it comes to the quiet ones. Especially the ones in Holiday Inn pools. There's research to back it up. Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool, man. Well, do you have? We always like want people to be able to push like anything that they want to tell people about on the show.
Yeah. You can of course find the podcast Exvangelical anywhere you listen to podcasts, either on Apple or wherever
in your
else.
bathtub.
You can also support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/exvangelicalpod. The Twitter is the same. Twitter is at Exvangelicalpod. I'm more active on my personal account at BR Chastain. And we also have a Facebook group with over 3,000 members. You just search for Exvangelical, and there is a lot of conversation there happening about all sorts of things. It's a really lively community, and it's really been amazing to see that blossom over the last year too. So if you're looking for a conversation about these sorts of things, the hashtag Exvangelical is used a lot on Twitter if you're a Twitter person. Otherwise, if you prefer Facebook, we're also there. So
this is great. I feel like that was you were kind of reading your script. So you're like looking, what are the social medias again? There's a Twitters and okay.
Yep.
I love it. I love it, dude. I feel like we would probably be friends if we lived a little closer. If you're ever in Western North Carolina, let's grab a drink.
Sounds good.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much for everything that you shared today, Blake.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
This was awesome. Can you say something outlandish about the 11D Life podcast?
The 11D Life podcast is the most numerically based podcast you'll listen to this week.
That's great. That's great. Bravo. Okay.